welcome to Breakfast with Soul. Make sure you tune in monthly and visit Lily and Louise as we take you deep inside the soul of your very own essence. Join us. Oh, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Breakfast with Soul from Sage Wisdom. Aren't we excited?
This is going to be an amazing journey today that we are going to start kind of from the beginning.
Yeah.
And see why we decided to do this. So, Lily, take it from here and get us started. Like, what brought this changing all about the energy out there?
Well, the question that I want to ask you, the viewer, is when did you start waking up to the soul of who you are? You know, we all have a mind, we have a body, and then we have our spirit, the soul. The soul that we are not a body that carries a soul. The soul is actually carrying our body. But when did you wake up to it? You know, Louise and I were having a brief discussion this morning about this very thing. And if you go back to 1987, ask yourself that question. Where were you in 1987?
Why is that? Why specifically 1987?
Well, 1987 was in August 16th and 17th, there was the convergence, the harmonic convergence. Does anybody remember that? There was 144,000 people from around the world that was started by Jose. Look him up. I will put all his information at the end of this podcast today because I can't pronounce his last name, but he was brilliant. He actually, Jose, started the very first Earth Day for us in 1970. And he, as an astrologer, knew what was going to be happening in August 16th and 17th. And that there was an alignment of planets. And we, our soul, was going to start waking up to who we were. Now, it's not that we woke up one morning and everything shifted. There was an energy shift. There was an energy change. And think about that for one moment. 144 people around the planet from different 1,000 people around the planet in different parts of the world, all praying at the same time for peace and harmony on our planet. How powerful is that? And I know, of course, since 1987, there's been many, many of these circles. I was blessed enough to be a part of one when we were in Bali with Desmond Tutu in 2005. But 87 was the year that it started. So how did you wake up? I know I woke up. It was 1987 was the year that I started studying and looking deeply into chakras. I was living in New Brunswick at the time. I was a mere 33 years old. And my good friend, Nicole, and I found out about Shirley MacLaine's chakra videos. So we started watching those and studying about what the chakras are, which, as most of you that are watching this today are fully aware, that the chakras are the organs to our soul. So we all know what's going on if something's going on in your back. I mean, what's really going on with the finances? Something's going on in your heart, what's going on? You know, I'll go in deeper in another podcast, but these chakras are also where the planets reside. So when you look at the synchronicity of Jose understanding the formation of those stars at that time point, at that frame point in 1987, and you combine all of that with the energies, look at where we're at today and how much we've all grown. So in 1987, I started studying about chakras. And then in 1991, I really woke up because I woke up one morning with this in my head. Your life is unraveling now. Get out of bed. And it was Spirit's way of telling me that I had an addiction and I needed to get into a 12-step program. So that was 1981. And I have to tell you, listeners, my life has never been the same. I went through deep, deep changes. I started reading Deepak Chopra's work, Marianne Williamson, Wayne Dyer. And then, of course, I went deep, deep into the studies in 2000 with Carolyn Mace. But that's my story. And then I'm going to come back to a little bit about some of the energy modalities that we're using. But right now, I want to find out about Louise. So in 1987, Louise, where were you? What was going on?
So I was a little bit younger than you, probably at a phase in my life, I'd say around 23, where I actually was starting off my career. I had moved from from the west coast of Canada and gotten an interview with a large beauty company. I was in the beauty industry as a stylist and didn't have a whole lot of confidence, but went to this interview, was scared out of my wits into it, but I actually got the position, and then I got transferred here into the central Canada a little bit more, and I started to travel and have to really prove myself. So it's where I found my voice, the empowerment of being able to do things. But I was also at a phase, like when you say spirituality or awakening, I feel like for me it wasn't so much an awakening as much as get empowered and where do you need to be. And I got pushed and pushed and pushed and really had to stand for myself and who I was. And it kind of goes into the life phase that we're at. If you're looking at on an Ayurvedic principle and Eastern philosophy, since you spoke about chakras, is that everything has elements, the earth, us, absolutely everything has elements. And when you're in that phase of your early 20s, you're very much earth, water, kapha, and it's about putting down the foundations, learning to see who you are, really feeling like survival mode, that kind of thing. So that's where I was at, where you were much more into in the mid 30s, where it's fire energy, Pitta, and where you're building it and you're really now starting to go within and building that phase of it. So there's such interesting things that go on that woke us up. And then we mentioned 91, which would have been just a few years later. Then I had that other shift almost in that same timing as you, where I discovered Reiki for the first time as I was trying to make a job change, and I had been persisting and pushing and pushing and pushing, trying to get an answer to move to a different location. And finally, being upset nothing was happening, I'm amongst a couple of friends after we've been doing meditation, and they said, Louise, you're really upset, why don't you lie down? And they did Reiki on me. Well, I go back to work the next day, and all of a sudden, all these doors are opening, and I'm going, what has shifted? Suddenly, it's like opportunities open, but I had surrendered. I had finally just said, stop trying to control it, just surrender. And then this Reiki energy just moved everything through. And then that's propelled me into researching more about energy and all of this wonderful changes that came in after.
It's fascinating because you say that I was in the space of the fire energy in my 30s, and I was doing things. At the time, I was still repping. I was on the road quite a bit with Crabtree and Evelyn and Canadian greeting cards. And that gave me such a great opportunity to study, because I was listening to all these tapes all the time. Plus, of course, throwing myself into that program. But I didn't hear about Reiki until in 2000, actually 98.
Okay.
So you were ahead of your time, faster than I was with the Reiki. Because in 1998 was when I first heard of the Trinity Table. I had joined John and I started taking ballroom dancing. And while we were there, a woman introduced me to a medium, a psychic medium, a doctor. She's a doctor, actually, Dr. Mary Anderson, out of Fairfax, Virginia. And one day I was talking to Mary, and she said, Lily, did you ever hear of the Trinity Table? And I said, yes, no. Yes, I have. And the way I had was I had dreamt about it 2 weeks prior. And I dreamt that in the dream, I was on sort of almost like in Greece, and looking down, sitting in these rows, looking down and seeing these beings of light healing somebody on a table that was spinning counterclockwise. That was in a dream. So 2 to 3 weeks later, I talked to Mary Anderson. And when she mentioned the Trinity Table, I had to go find out what this was about. So I got on a flight, went to Fairfax, Virginia, and had my first experience with the Trinity Table. And the Trinity Table is actually a 500 pounds of solid oak, and it spins counterclockwise. So it brings you into theta within 8 to 10 minutes. And when we're in theta, you know, when we get up in the morning and you have every answer to any question is inside of you the first thing in the morning before ego gets in the way. So what happens on the Trinity Table, you start to experience self like you never have before. And then for some people, they experience past lives. For some people, they see relatives that have passed on. Some people simply pass out and go to sleep because they need the rest. And I've had many clients like that with the Trinity table. So in 1998, 1999, in 2000, I was studying deeply. And then I finally purchased the Trinity table in 2001. And in order to purchase the table, you needed to be a Reiki master because of that energy. So that's how I got into Reiki. And the rest became history. So then when I purchased the table, I got really busy. So I was still on the road and I was seeing clients in our home. And it's fascinating, again, the synchronicities and how things happen. Spirituality, doesn't happen to you, you are it. We are here, now. You've all heard Eggert's book on the power of now. We're in the moment. The spirituality is not outside, it's in us. We're just waking up to it. So the more I started to study, the deeper, more table rides myself and my clients had, the deeper spirit started talking to us. There's no separation in that energy. It's just our ego, in my humble opinion, that keeps us separated like that. So when I was seeing these clients, there was a day that one of my clients was at the house and I said, this is not working for me anymore, this space. I had my own sacred space, had my own altar in the house, had altars all over the house. Altars literally alters the consciousness of your surroundings. And this one day I said to my girlfriend Diana, I need a shift. We need a new house so I can house more workshops. So she comes home, texts me that evening and says, I think I found your house. And she had. So by 2006, we moved here to Almont. And that then really propelled my journey. And that's how basically Breakfast with Soul got started. Because I would go to the grounds, I'd walk down to the grounds here in Almont, and I'd be sitting like this, Louise and I would be talking to somebody else about spirituality. And all of a sudden on Friday mornings, 2 people. Then there'd be 3 people. Then there'd be 4. So we started meeting weekly. And then we decided to do a Power Up Your Life event with Dr. Mona Lisa Schultz. And that just propelled us into Breakfast with Soul in a deeper way. So we were meeting monthly, not weekly, sorry. We're meeting monthly. And then, of course, 2020 hit. And that stopped. We stopped meeting and we started doing it on Zoom. Sometimes it's 2 people show up, sometimes 22. But my attitude was it didn't matter who showed up as long as I and the spirit of my understanding did. And it was from that whole ordeal that I started doing my writings on what I'm doing. So that was part of my story and how it happened. But we're really interested in what yours is and how, where were you in 1987 and where are you now? Are you still, it's so difficult for most of us, isn't it? To stay out of the ego. We need an ego. I got to get up in the morning and I have to, what is it? My gluten-free bread is $8 a loaf.
It's the first
So we have to get up. We have to get up. We have to get up and we have to get going. But finding that middle ground of being here now, which is so important. That book, I can see why it did so well because for me anyway, it taught us stop future time traveling. We're all time travelers at some level. We're in the back or we're in the future instead of right here, right now. So that's the question I'm asking you. Where were you and where are you now? And what does it feel like to say I'm a quote unquote being of light? I didn't get my PhD in this work like most of my colleagues did, especially those with the Trinity table. But I have a BBL. Beings of bright light. That's it. Bright being of light. And we all are.
Beacons of bush light.
And we all are. But it was from all that work then with Breakfast with Soul and Power Up Your Life, then I decided to go deep into studying Carolyn Mace's work.
That's where I think you and I started to meet a little bit more. I ran into you one time at breakfast, and then from there you started coming into my business, which was a salon at the time. But the whole Carolyn Myss work, and really I find propelled me through what I've learned through you, is shifting out of the ego, understanding more our patterns and archetype, our the shadow side, but not looking necessarily as, oh my goodness, I'm doomed, this is the shadow of me. So instead of actually embracing that shadow and the lesson that it's showing you, so you start to really get to know yourself more on a soul level. And it helped me more get out of my head, because I find that for me, I was always on a journey of what book can I read? What more can I do to get more spiritual, always chasing after that thing. And I would look at individuals go, well, how come they can connect? And all this work that I'm doing, all this reading that I'm doing, I can't seem to connect. Missing all that time, the signs that were dropping there in front of me, the synchronicities, the openness, as soon as I would just open my eyes and just be present in the moment. And so some of that work really helped to kind of shift me up being present and now, having a look at what's this teaching me, the shadow part of what I'm doing that's not so not serving me at my highest will. And so it's interesting when you say, where were you in 87? And then you go, when did I awaken? I hear those words all the time. I awoke when blah, blah, blah. And I always go, I must not be awoken, because I don't specifically remember waking up or that awakening moment. I do remember, however, through COVID, having that really hitting the wall after pushing so much to try to be able to do my work, and so my identity was wrapped up into my work, obviously, as a business owner. And then just finally, because my hands were tied and it was beyond my control, hitting that dark hour of the soul where I just burst and broke down and then realized this is beyond me, I can't do anything. I went within. I started a little bit more than just reading, but actually practicing more, doing, getting involved with a group so that I could share and creating community that way. And finally went within, and that's when things started to click more. Just be authentic, be here, be now. What is it that you need to connect to?
And it was so interesting when I was teaching the archetypes, and it's all based on Carl Jung's work that Carolyn took and just brilliantly laid out for us to make it so much easier on what is the difference between our fate, what are we here for, and what do we make of our destiny, what's the difference. And it's interesting, one of the big reasons I think I decided to study with her, and I didn't realize it at the time, is because of the work I do now in the 12-step program, for instance. In the program, we have what we call character defects. And I've always been very, to back off from that. Because what happens is, it's telling me I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. And I am perfection. We all are, each and every one of us, in the light of who we are and the connection to the collective. We are sacred. We are whole. We are holy. It's the ego that has a tendency to separate. So the word patterns of behavior instead of character defects, I could ride that wave. So that's why I put my whole heart and my soul into her work. And we all have those 12 aspects of ourselves that sometimes we're in light and sometimes we're in shadow. But how do you know yourself unless you know what your patterns are? So that's part of some of the work that I personally have been doing all these years in workshops and with individuals. Now, Louise has just started something new that she's been doing with work with individuals. And the reason that we're happy that you're here and that we really want you to know that this is your podcast is because there's so many different ways for us to tap in to our truth, our love. I personally like to think of the God of my understanding as love. If I'm not in light, I'm not in love. God resides inside of me. And the best way I ever heard someone talk about spirituality, a conversation I had with someone, was Baker Bob, right here in Almont. I'll let him know that I mentioned him today. And we used to be able to do our Breakfast with Soul as a group at his bakery. And one day he's kneading his bread and he's saying, well, I don't get everything that you guys do because I'm not very spiritual. And I said, Bob, look at you. You're feeding the masses. You're devoted to what you do. How could that be more spiritual? Baking a cake for someone you love. We don't need to be spiritual. We are connected to a light that's so divine in us, but we forgot, we forget. And I can only speak for myself, allow people, places, and things outside of me to dictate who they think I am. And for years I tried to fit into that until I started doing the work with Carolyn. And then I was able to stand on my 2 feet and say, here I am. What do you want of me? And the other big lesson from her is, how do I best serve? We're here, not because I deserve anything, it's to serve humanity. You get up every morning with, how do I best serve humanity? So go back to you. I've been using all these other modalities. Now tell us a little bit about all the things you do, because you are one of the most creative people I know. And I do not say that lightly. Everything you touch turns to gold. Everything.
Well, thank you very much for that. That's really kind of you. One of the biggest things for me has always been, I from being a child, I was always creating something, whether it be make-believe or creating a house or creating this and that. So when I first started in my career, it was as a hairstylist, as a program, and I didn't feel very good about myself because I had dropped out of engineering and dropped out of this, and then I just took what I thought, well, this will be easy, and lo and behold, it became a big propel for me for my career. I worked 11 years with L'Oreal doing education for salons, and then sales, and then shows, all kinds of things. And then when I came to this area in 2000 and just decided to leave the corporate world to do my own business, I started a salon in my home, and then it'll expand over the years into a full spa. And it was always about sharing the beauty of transformation, but it was very much sort of the outer part, but yet, although I was in service, there was part of me that was, you could see I was kind of parallel into that, where if somebody said, I'm at the hairdresser's, I would go, I feel so, and that's when I realized I was in the ego of it. I needed to have better self-esteem about what I did and through it, but I didn't see it at the time. And then over the years, I started doing also the Reiki and Shirodara, and studying with an East Indian doctor, learning some of the methods of the Eastern philosophies, explored shamanism, explored so many different energy work with it, as well as I was continuing to do hair and doing more of the creative over the people. And then just wanted, I love to paint, I love to do music. So at one point I picked up a cello, and then I started to teach myself a little bit about cello, only because the strings would just grab my heart each time. And I thought, I'm 47 at the time, and I just want to do it. It's not like I'm going to go play in an orchestra. I'm just going to it's for me. And so that's been an interesting journey of just learning the different classical string instruments, just for the pure enjoyment of it, as much as I beat myself up.
First concert. I remember,
my
John, I
gosh.
went to your first concert. I loved it.
And then I thought, maybe stick to something that I'm more comfortable with. And I picked up the paintbrush, since I do that on a daily basis when I do colors and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I went to Venice in 2017 with a group of artists and went and painted. And I remember the first time standing on the edge of the canals and people stopping as I'm setting up my outdoor painting thing, along with this small group of 10 that we're with. And they're asking me questions, and I'm going, don't ask me, like, I'm not an artist, I'm just doing this. Again, always not really being in the moment and seeing where your expression is at. And so I came home from that, and then just started getting into the art and started to paint. And I think that's where I started really feeling that connection with me, of just channeling what I paint when I feel like painting. Sometimes I take a break and then I'm creating it another way. But I tend to paint with what I've seen or done, or something that gets me on a heart level. Then I'll put it on canvas, and I've enjoyed doing that. And it's kind of now merging in with the other modality that you've talked about, because after coming back from a trip to Egypt, where it was really about energy and initiation and really connecting to the soul, I was told by a wonderful individual that I was roaming with, you are going, these are healing hands. And so it made me sort of re-look back at the Reiki that I used to do. I went more in depth into Egyptian Reiki because I sort of discovered Sekhem energy all through the temples of Egypt, and it just had me captivated. So I studied a bit of that, and then through that and hearing about Egypt and King Tut, I stumbled on an individual she was on a show on Gaia, Sarah Breslin Cosme, who started talking about King Tut and all these QHHT, which is quantum healing hypnosis technique by Dolores Cannon, and I just went, that's so me. I'm talking to my clients every day in the salon, and we're sharing things, and why is this pulling me? So I hit the roll and I took it, and oh my goodness, it is such an amazing journey. I've done just in my level 1, but at the same time, the people that it's bringing towards me for this, which is very much on an energetic level, what's in vibration. And through this technique, we're basically allowing people to really get into, you mentioned earlier with your Trinity table of going into Theta, that's basically what we're tapping into, is we spend time getting to know the individual through an interview. And then when we set up to do a hypnosis session, we're just bringing them very naturally into the state of Theta, which we experience every day upon awakening, as we're coming out of the dream, where you're really connected to the higher self. And at night, when we go and start to drift off to sleep, where we start to get those images that come in. So we, through this beautiful induction that Dolores developed, bring the individual into Theta, and then from there they'll connect to the higher self. So it might be that their experiences are past lives, present life when they were younger, future lives, out in outer space, in between lives. I mean, the sky is the limit. And so what it does is, through this, is it really allows for, even from my perspective as a practitioner, to connect to the fact that we are the higher self. When you're finally touching base with the subconscious at the end of this session, and we're really talking to the subconscious or the higher self, it's us, the soul. And I had a chance also to experience being on the receiving end, to have a session, which I really wanted to do so that I could actually know what it feels like and what my clients are going through. And through the whole time I'm going, wow, it was a really interesting shift. When I was in a past life, what sort of validated it for me is that as soon as this emotion came up, I went, why am I having an emotion around this? So then I'd go in and explore it and go, okay, there's something there. The emotions don't lie. And so I go in and explore it. And then when we went to the end of all these lives that I viewed, and I touched base more with my subconscious or my higher self, I sort of went, well, that's me. But I feel so grounded. It's like, I know this. Isn't that interesting? So there it is. Just be here. It's this, we are a spirit in the physical body to experience this life, to bring in aspects like I'm getting a chance to experience this around me, and then when I go to the next dimension, I take all this with me in my soul. So it just finally got me going out of my head, and it's all happening here at the same time. It's an incredible connection with it.
So with the hypnosis, people can contact you for appointments, and we'll put all that information at the bottom for people. Yes,
so I am booking appointments. It generally takes, I've been doing more like 6 hours altogether, so it's part of the day. And so I am doing the internship at the moment, where I still have a few sessions left that are free. I'm hoping to do some work. It's been kind of playing with my mind of doing something more through donations for the beginning part, maybe through a well-known charity in the area. So I'm looking into that. But I just find that right now I'm experiencing it also from the practitioner portion of sharing that, enjoying who's coming in to have a session, what it opens up for them, what it opens up for me. And just that journey, just let it also sometimes show up on a painting that, because of an experience, I go, look at that. I had an envision of me in Pompeii, and I had already done a painting in Pompeii, and I just went, that is just so crazily. And
So what's going to be fascinating for you, the viewer, if you're interested in taking part in this hypnosis that originated really from Egypt, is that what I understand?
No, this one is it was developed by Dolores Cannon.
It is Dolores Cannon's
Yeah,
work.
and
Okay.
she worked on this 40 years of work, many books, many studies, and so the late Dolores, she passed in 2014, and now they've continued the university. Her daughter Julia Cannon has continued on, and there are people being taking and becoming QHHT practitioners across the world, quantum healing hypnosis technique.
Do you want to take part in this? Because she still has some space left while she's doing her internship. So we'll put all that information at the end of this podcast today. And also I want you to know that if you're interested in the Trinity Table, we downsize. My husband and I will have 50 years this year.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. We downsized. So I actually sold it to a friend of mine in Mamatic at Darpan's at Mamatic Natural Market. But I do go there once a week if you're interested. She does take clients, but I also still see some of my other clients. So if you're interested, we'll put that there also. But what do you do? What have you been doing since 1987? What have you been doing since this morning? What are you doing to stay connected to the soul of who you are? We want to know. So what I'd like for you to do is, if you like this video, let us know. If you want to find out more about what we do, because we're going to be meeting once a month. I will be doing my own little thing once a week, but myself and Louise will be meeting once a month. So what we'd like for you to do is tell us what you'd like to hear about in these podcasts. The next one, I'm going to go deeper into fate, destiny. I started something called AAA, which is actually angels, because I am an angel therapist, archetypes, and astrology. And we'll go deeper into that in the next podcast. What do you do to co-create with the universe? Because that's all spirituality is, my friends, my dear soul companions. Do not put yourself anywhere at a disadvantage of saying, I don't know. You do know. Every answer we need is inside us. All Louise and I want to do is push and say, come on, wake up, wake up. Here you are. And everything is just for today. So I'm going to leave you with a small prayer. We are going to leave you with a small prayer. You know, after I opened up the White Light Retreat, when we bought this house, our original home here in Almont, then I went into a business, which will be another podcast, as to why I did it and how Louise helped me and her sister. How we opened up the White Lily. That's a whole podcast in itself. And what happened then when I closed it. But when I did close it, I was in a great deal of grief from a few things. But when I was in my grief, I actually went home and I wrote a few books. And one of them was 365 Ways to Power Up Your Life. And today, it's all about sharing. So I'd like to share it with you, if I may, as we close. It's day 166 today. The spirit of sharing. What is spiritual sharing? Do we share because it makes us feel good? Are we not feeling our ego sometimes? Spiritual sharing is sharing even when it's uncomfortable. So at the end of this podcast, write down the things that make you feel uncomfortable and how we can help you with that. For example, we're not sharing spiritually if we withhold compliments about someone's good deeds because we have an issue with that person. Spiritual sharing brings many blessings into our lives. We may not even be aware of them. The more uncomfortable it is for us, the more our souls evolve. I want to say that again. The more uncomfortable it is for us, the more our souls evolve, because then our ego has to get out of the way.
It's interesting that you said that's beautiful.
Thank you. Just for today, let the spirit of unconditional sharing have us. Thank you.
In doing one of the sessions of hypnosis, the individual was in between lives, and so they're seeing a lot of white, and then suddenly it looks like there's a whole council of beings, all the way, 12 of them, all around this individual, and then they started getting very emotional on the fact that they were being told they were going back. And I said, what's happening? What's going on with these things? Are they around you? And I have to go back. I have to go back to Earth. And well, why is that making you upset? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. So then we're asking, well, ask them, like, why? Why are you going back? If you're talking, can you talk to them? Well, the biggest part of it was the biggest message, is that we choose the life that we come.
That's right.
And sometimes we sign up for hard lives, because the harder we choose our choices and the more we try to do things, the more we are expansion of our soul. And so therefore, sometimes we forget, of course, when we get here, we go, what did I sign up for? But that harder life, or those challenges, or all of that, is what expands us and makes us really, really open up and gets the ego out of the way.
It breaks us so the light can come in.
Yes.
It breaks us so
Cracking
the light,
open.
so that the light comes in. You know, and it's interesting, even when I say that, I want to withdraw, because, you know, I want to say it cracks us so that the light comes in, because we're already there. The light is already there. Nothing is actually happening with that cracking. The light is there. It's just the ego takes a bow. The ego says, I know my place, because my soul is so much deeper than I ever thought. That's why it's always just for today. So we're really glad that you've joined us today. And please remember, this is not just about Lily and Louise. This is about you. Tell us what you would like discussed, because at some point when we get really comfortable with this, we're going to be doing live so that we can start answering some of your questions. And you may have some questions you want us to answer, or vice versa. This is your podcast. So please be sure to join us again. We'll stay in touch. Have a great day. And remember, just for today, let the breakfast of your soul have you. Eat well. Nourish mind, body, spirit. That's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to always share the journey with you.
So much fun.